So essentially, this is kind of a very generic type of question here. This person is using the inflection solver. They want to be able to, identify, right, or, well, they want a buy signal, right, when the inflection goes green, red, green, right? So that would typically be, as we can see, they're circling what looks to me to be something like a MACD indicator with some other moving averages on it, right? So we got this, a momentum type of looking indicator, right? And it inflects up, so that would give you the green inflection. And then at point 2, it would inflect down, giving you a red, right, or a short inflection, and then inflect up again, so giving you a long or a green inflection, right? So there you go. That would be our green, red, let's put a space in there, right? Green, red, green, there, right? So, yep, 1, 2, 3. So that is, yeah, so this would be a pretty quick, easy question here to answer. And in order to get my MACD to kind of look similar, all right, I put on a Renko chart here. Okay, so let's get BloodHound open. Set up a file name first. All right, so let's do a save as, and we'll put in today's workshop date. And all right, so now we have a file that we're saving all of our work to. We're good to go. So let's see here. I'm going to change the name of this logic template here. Yeah, let's see. There we go. All right, so that's all we're looking for really. It's an inflection going up, down, up. And it'll also generate the opposite at the same time, right? So let's grab an inflection solver. Start off with that. And again, I think this is, I think this image, I think this screenshot here is showing me the MACD. So we're going to plug in this MACD here. All right, so for the input here, change the indicator from the SMA to the MACD. And we're going to do the MACD line itself. There we go. All right, so there we have it. Right? All these inflection points now are marked. So there we go. We have a green, red, green. So let's give this a name here. All right. Now, kind of one of the key concepts here that really is being taught, right, is ultimately we want a buy signal at the end, right? So we're starting with a buy signal, but then we get a sell signal, right, coming from the inflection solver, right? And obviously a green and red racing stripe in itself is not a buy or a sell signal, right? It's just a generic signal, right? It's not until you combine everything together, then that's when you ultimately end up with a buy or a sell signal. So we're getting a long signal, and then we get a short signal, right? So that short signal, right, that short component has to be reversed to a long, right? So if you want a buy signal, if there's any component of your system that's generating, right, a red or short output, it has to be reversed to a long. So everything has to be a long signal in order to get long signals out. So, and then also we have to connect things together, right? We have to connect the spacing of these together, right? So one happens first, a few bars later, number 2 happens, and then a few bars later, number 3 happens. So we have to connect, right, what's happened in the past to what's happening now, currently, right? I don't want to say the future, but yeah, we had to bring what happened in the past, bring it forward to the current bar, right? So actually there's two concepts here, right? So we're taking these two older outputs and then bringing them forward in time until this third condition occurs, right? And then once we combine them all together, and then we get our buy or sell signal. Right? So let's see, where's a good example? Yeah. So let's just focus right there. And ultimately, right, we're expecting, there you go, that we're expecting to see that long signal right there. So first step, how do we, we need to take this first green inflection and bring it forward until the next inflection point happens, right? And so to do that, we're going to use the signal extender. There we go, signal extender. And you got to ask yourself, okay, how many bars does this 1, 2, 3 pattern kind of do? Or how many bars does this green, red, green require here? And again, looking at this screenshot that was sent in, right? It looks like this all happens fairly quickly, right? So let's see. I'm gonna assume that probably 5 bars is plenty of time to go from the inflection up to the inflection down, right? Or from point 1 to point 2. So when we look at this, there we go, right? So we get our inflection up, we get a long output, and then it's extended forward in time until the inflection down can occur. So now we need that inflection down. And let's see here. There's a couple of ways I could do this. I think I'm gonna. There's lots of different ways I can do this. And now that we have these modifier buttons here, that gives us a lot of different ways we can do this. And so the way I used to do it in the past is I would take a look back node. The way I used to do it was I would take an inverter node. So yeah, I used to take an inverter node because that's or a long short modifier. A long short modifier. So with the long short modifier, I was using the swap mode here. But now with BloodHound version 2, we actually have swap buttons and invert buttons on all of the nodes. So I don't actually need that anymore, at least not for this purpose. So the long short modifier still has functionality in it that's necessary. So I'm going to use this look back node here, and let's see. Actually, no, we don't. Yeah, I'm just going to use the swap functionality here. So I don't want a displacement, so I'm setting the displacement to 0, but I'm going to enable this swap here. And if we take a look at this, right? So remember this inflection point, right? This is a down inflection, but now look, it's a long signal. So we made this red inflection down into a green. So now we have a green and a green instead of a red, right? So next we can combine these two together. And there we have it. So there is point number 2. And so to take a look at this, right? So to take a step back here, and actually let's it's always good to put in a full name here, so that way you know what's going on, right? So this signal extender is a 5-bar signal extender there. All right, so if we look at this signal extender, right, 0.1, actually, let's stretch this out a little bit there. All right, so that's 0.1, gives us a long output. All right, 0.1 inflects up, and we're extending that forward there until we get the next inflection down. And so this represents, right, the opposite, or point number 2. Right, yeah, maybe, you know what, let's call this point number 2. There we go. I think that's an even better name there. All right, so that's point number 2. And we're just using the swap functionality there. Right. So again, we look at this. So there we go. So everything's been reversed now, or swapped. Right. So when it goes up, we're now getting a short, and then when it goes down, we're getting a long. So and then we combine that. There we go. So let's see. So this would be the inflection number 2 point. All right. And so now we need to take this and extend it forward until we get our next our last inflection up. Right. So let's stretch this out a little bit. So we're going to add another signal extender. And again, I'm going to assume that 5 bars is probably good enough, right? So let's see, let's just copy that name. And let's paste it in there. There we go. So, all right, so here's kind of where, yeah, my little example is going to fall apart, because this next one, this last inflection up, or point number 3, right, just took too long here. So let's see if I can find a better spot, actually. Yeah, that's not quite working either. Oh, here we go. All right. Yeah, this actually looks very close to the image there. There. All right, we'll focus in on that. All right, so there's point 1, point 2, and now we can see, right, our long output is extending forward until we get to point 3. So let's see. So I'm going to grab another AND node here, and really we just need, you know, this inflection solver once again. So we're going to connect. All right, so we're going to take this signal extender, connect it into an AND node, and then connect this inflection solver in one more time. And that will do it. And there it is, right there. Kind of, let's break this down here in a little moment. So, you know, again, this is a really kind of generic concept here, where it's just focusing on the inflection solver and looking, you know, and how do you basically count, you know, 3 signals or 3 outputs coming from the inflection solver here, right? So, right, so the first output went into a signal extender. Again, let's take a look at that. Right, went into a signal extender. And there we go. Right, so that's, there we go, point number 1. And then it takes that long output and extends it forward in time until the next inflection point can occur. Right, so the signal extender is how we're able to take something in the past and extend it forward into the future for other conditions to occur, right? So the signal extender is one way we can do that, right? There's other nodes here. You could also use a toggle node. You could also use a look back here, right? So there. And then we know our next inflection is going to be in the opposite direction, right? So a red. So we had to take there. Yeah. So we had to take this inflection down and reverse it to a long, because ultimately we need long, long, and long in order to get a bisignal. Right? So in other words, long signals need to go into the AND node. So here we go. Inflection point number 2, right? We just used a look back node just so that we could use the swap functionality of it, right? Actually, I could have done this just to emphasize the point. I could have just thrown an OR node in here like that, and even the OR node has a swap functionality. And if we connect this in, right, there we go. We get the same thing. And if we look at this AND node here, right, remember this AND node, right, there you go, point number 2, and there's our long output from that AND node there. Right. So actually I'll go ahead and just leave it like that. So let's just delete that, and we'll leave it this way. Doesn't really matter. And then again, we took point, right, or inflection number 2, put it in a signal extender, right, to extend it forward until inflection number 3 happens, right? And then again, this inflection solver is giving us all the inflections that we need. We just needed to use some signal extenders, reverse one of them, and then ultimately, there we go. And there's our signal. So, all right, so that concludes it. So let me see if there's any follow-up questions on this here. Let's see. No, I don't see any follow-ups specifically here. Although I guess, yeah, Ron was probably asking, what is a displacement? Yeah, Ron probably asked that when I had the look back node up here. Displacement, that's a NinjaTrader function, right? If you pull up, yeah, let me open up the MACD here, right? In NinjaTrader, you can displace, there you go, you can displace all of your indicators, right? Basically, all it does is it moves the output forward X number of bars, right? Just moves the output forward X number of bars. And so it does the same thing, for BloodHound as well. So, yeah, if you have, let's grab another look back here. Yeah, actually, yeah, you know what? We can still see, cancel that, right? There's our output right there. And if we look at the look back node with the displacement set to 1, right, it just shifted it forward, right? Same thing it does with the indicators.